Good morning. There's been another sting in Hartford County, Maryland, and it joins many, many others that have been going on. I've been aware of just, probably a fraction of them all over the United States. But I want to focus on this one because it's local, because even though I said I wasn't going to work today, I am, and because it is really egregious. Not that we don't, not that we can say for certainty that this baseball coach did not do something or intended to do something. We don't know that. There's reason to believe he did. But that's not really the point, okay? Even though that's very important. The point is, what did the police do, and why aren't we getting a complete report of the entirety? Because that's where we'll find out the issues of intent, that what was really being planned here, and why the police were involved at all. So let's dive in a little bit here. A baseball coach here arrested on child solicitation charges. Okay? Harford County, not Hartford County. And baseball coach in Harford County is facing charges, solicitation of a 15-year-old boy. Okay, so first thing to realize is there was never a boy. Now, the way they have it written in the law in a lot of states, I was just reading Minnesota law last night, is it doesn't matter, and that's not a defense. They've tried that defense before, but that wasn't a 15-year-old. That's not a defense. We may come to a day again where we can look at that and make that a defense, whether there was an actual child, because when you read Minnesota law or Maryland law or anybody's law, Virginia law, in the definitions, it defines what a child is: a live person. A child is not a non-person, it's a live person, a live person. So why is it that we have a situation where we don't have a live person here? Can you have a solicitation of a cartoon? It's another issue, hasn't been fully litigated. So the first thing is we got to get that understood. There was no 15-year-old boy. Going on from there, okay? So the sheriff of Harford County, Sheriff Gaylor, I guess I'm pronouncing it right, announced the arrest of this guy who was a tutor and a baseball coach on 2 felony counts. What did he do? Well, if there was no kids, how did the police get involved? We'll get to that. He served as he told detectives he serves as a baseball coach. Remember, folks, don't talk to police, especially if they're coming to arrest you. If they're coming to arrest you, they're going to use everything that you say against them. I made that mistake. Many people make the mistake. I knew I was innocent, so I said, it doesn't matter. You may say, I'm innocent. I have nothing to hide. That's not the point. They will turn whatever you say against you. That's the point. And they tell you that. That's what a Miranda right is, right? When they read that right to you, it's the right and the responsibility to remain silent. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your people, to your family, to button it when they come a-calling. And they tell you that. And I will tell you that they will twist around anything you say. Anything you say that clearly makes you guilty, and anything that you say that does not make you guilty, they will twist around to make it look guilty. So the safest course of action, attorneys will tell you, is don't talk. According to authorities, this is where we get into the weeds. Swarthout, I'm going to say Swarthout, I don't know, used an online app to communicate with the undercover deputy who was posing as a 15-year-old boy. Stop right there. Why? Deputy, why? Why were you doing this? Why were you subjecting people to a virtue test? Why? Why? Because think about this for a moment. If the deputy had not created that decoy account for somebody to find, if they were looking for that, they would not have found that. But we know that deputies don't do this and just sit there waiting for something to happen. They get right into the game. They approach you. They bring up sex first increasingly. They do all kinds of things very similar to that as well to entrap you. They create, we have evidence that they create it on Kick, where they invite you into the chat room and all the other people are detectives or other people that they're trying to frame. But there's at least one case I know of where there was a detective who invited you in and all the other people were also detectives and they used it as a training mission and you were the one guy who wasn't and you were up on child solicitation charges. So why are they engaging you in this, folks? Why are they doing this? Okay? If somebody stopped you and tried to convince you to buy something, and you kept saying, no, 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 hell no, ain't no way, no. You said, well, let me look at that for a minute. And they went, aha, and they arrested you. You'd be out of your mind with upset. And that's what's happening here. So right out the gate, no 15-year-old. There's no reason to suspect he was interested necessarily in that because we don't know what the cop said to him. This doesn't tell you enough. What was the cop doing there? Did the cop approach him? What happened? They leave that part out. But we have seen court filings where we see what they say because they had to put those into the filing to make their point before the judge. And with overly permissive judges, that works. Now, the question I just asked, what was the cop doing there to begin with, was asked by Judge Bernstein in the Michigan Supreme Court case, U.S. v. Jade. And in that case, with a unanimous court, they sent it back to the lower court, the trial court, to force them to make a finding of entrapment. I'm sorry, I misspoke. To investigate a finding of entrapment. Why? Because they said he should have been allowed an entrapment defense. So in a way, yes, they're forcing the trial court to consider entrapment as a defense. And since the trial court doesn't want to be reversed again, it will allow the findings of fact and the natural courtroom procedures to go forward on an entrapment defense, whereas the first time they shut it down, as many Virginia courts are shutting it down. Now we're starting to look at it honestly. Was this guy really looking for a 15-year-old hookup, or was he induced into it? That's not clear here. The article tells you he was looking for it, but the person who wrote this relied totally on what the police told them because that's what they always do in the media. Go down further. Now a statement from the sheriff. Let me make one thing absolutely clear. If you target our kids, we will find you, we will arrest you, and we will bring you to justice. We don't know that that happened. We only know what this guy said. And, you know, we pause for a beer commercial. All right, moving on. There's more. Stick around here because Chris Hansen is going to show up at the end. So he was held without bail, held without bond. Okay? Why? Should have been bond, not bail, I think. Held without bond. Why? Why was he held? Why? There was no real person. Why? Because this is considered to be having no presumption of bail. Anything where they can link the word sex, online, and child, no bail. No child, right? No danger to anyone, and we don't know what the police did to induce it, but we'll hold him in prison. We'll hold him in jail, rather. Swartooth, now we get more details. Said that the deputy who was... Okay. So we have here court records. He was disguised as a teenage boy, this deputy named Aiden, and on an app called Sniffies, which is a common app gaining in popularity against Grindr and some of the other ones that might be out there. I think Sniffies is a gay app. I think so. But it's gaining popularity. I've seen a number of them out there. I've talked to a couple of my gay friends, and they said, yes, it's kind of replacing Grindr out there. Charging documents accuse the coach of sending sexually charged messages and explicit photos and asking for photos in return. Okay, again, what were the police doing? Looks bad. Not discounting what he did, but what happen beforehand. We never see that. Police instead say, well, this is part of our investigative. No, it's not. Admitting what you're doing in here is not part of your investigation. It doesn't give away investigatory techniques. It doesn't give away anything except potential culpability, which we have seen many times. It arrested another person, which they also have to drag through the mud here, a Catholic school teacher, on similar charges. They also put here that this guy, Swartooth, is a father of two, and he left his 8-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son with a 12-year-old neighbor to meet up with the deputy disguised as a teen boy. Doesn't look good, but again, what were the police doing? If he went on Sniffies and didn't find anyone and nobody approached him, he might not have left to begin with. Got to allow for that too. Both of these married grown men have put themselves into positions where they interact with children every single day. So what? So far, we don't know that they're a danger to children. We don't know if there was fantasy play involved. We don't know this. Again, folks, critical thinking. Don't tell me that you know based on the article that I'm stretching things. I'm just saying, what else could it be? That's it. What else could it be? What else might be going on based on what we know in other cases? If you're going to say, well, based on so many of these I see, there's got to be a bunch of guys going after children. Yeah, I grant you that. But for the fact that we also know that there are a lot of cops who fake these things, cops to push these forward, vigilantes who set up people. We had an Alex Rosen case where Rosen's completely, well, I don't see that here. That's true. And maybe he's innocent, but I don't think so. Okay? Not going to admit he may have screwed up and ruined a man's reputation. And the man was fired from his job. He had to take early retirement. Did Alex Rosen apologize for that? No. No, he didn't. And he's making a lot of money doing it, so he's going to keep doing it. After all, he doesn't have a college education. He's obviously somebody who doesn't get along and work well with people, so he probably doesn't have a chance to have a career as a normal human being out there, and he has to go out and be a jerk. We're not going to tolerate it. Last point. Gahler said these arrests resulted from a partnership with the true crime series Takedown, which is Chris Hansen's new reinvention of himself so he can stay relevant and make some money, marking the third time the department has teamed up with the show. So, this is a made-for-TV thing, and we have seen with Chris Hansen several times, and I've reported on this channel, where Chris Hansen fakes stuff, gins it up, where he is called on it, and a judge demands that he produce his segment reports, the original unedited footage, and Chris Hansen's busy tap dancing around the issue, and he's held in contempt of court, which has happened a couple of times so far. So why are we relying on this media extravaganza? Why is Harford County? Well, because they want attention. All these police departments are vying for attention. I've talked about that in one in, I think, Texas or New Mexico I did a few months back. They want attention because when they get attention, it looks good for the county. It brings money in. It gets media press, all right? And if they want more money to do ICAC trainings and stuff, this is a perfect way of getting a little free PR that they can go to the legislature and says, look, we're getting this attention, as well as, this is a big problem. And everybody loves that because it means money. That's why. And this is why they do it. Why would a police force engage with a vigilante or engage with somebody like Chris Hansen, who's not mentioned here, but that's his series, you can look it up, Takedown, and with his shady reputation, unless there was something in it for them? So discount everything I said and ask yourself the critical inquiry question, which is, why would they involve themselves with Chris Hansen and Takedown? This is the third time. Why would they do that? And what did the police do? And why won't they share with us what it is they're up to? Why won't they share their chats? They're not proprietary. They say the same things. We have tried to get into their, training expos. We've tried to have them on our channel. We've tried having them on Stinging Back and other places. And the only time they'll do it is heavily scripted media events like Dr. Phil and some others, where they know that they're in a favorable position and they won't have to defend themselves. It's only when you have a court like like Michigan v. Jade in state of Michigan, and the one out in Utah escapes me at the moment, and a couple others. There's one in New Mexico that happened some months back, where it ended up being downgraded to a misdemeanor charge because they just knew they were going to lose the case otherwise, and they didn't want to bring forth their chats to expose what the police were up to. So you have to ask these critical thinking questions, folks. Don't buy all this. Now, I'd like you to please like, subscribe, and share. And, just ask yourself why these cases increasingly show up in the media. Is it because children are really in danger? Is it because maybe somebody has some sick or crazy fantasies involving children, but they're not going to cross the line, which maybe you wouldn't like? Maybe there's an intergenerational thing. Maybe this guy is a gay person and he's interested in a younger gay person, and we have younger gay people reaching out. But all of that presupposes in the minds of many that these children are in danger. But when you go and you look at psychological reports and you look at research scientists who delve into this, they say that's not necessarily the case. Even in issues involving real pedophilia or even predatory behavior, people will use the fantasy as a way to mitigate things. But suppose somebody's calling them out. Suppose somebody is taking somebody like you would an alcoholic or a drug addict and saying, have a drink, it won't hurt you, and pushing their natural defenses down. That's entrapment. That's inducement and enticement in the law. And for those of you on here saying, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, there is. It's illegal. And they're not allowed to induce or entice or coerce or persuade. It's part of the federal law. You're not allowed to do it with an underage person. They're not allowed to do it with somebody who might be a vulnerable person who are on here. And again, not saying that is the truth, saying it's a possibility that you have to not discount until you get further information. And that's what an analysis like this is designed to do, get you thinking about that, because it has been the case before. Be safe, have a good day.